Hello, welcome to Unical Academy's CISSP Simple Training Series. In this video, we cover Domain 1, Security and Risk Management, mainly focusing on Chapter 1 of the Official Study Guide. Official Study Guide suggests 4 chapters for the Domain 1, Security and Risk Management. This particular video is focusing on Chapter 1 of the Official Study Guide. This suggested approach that Unical Academy recommends is first you watch this video, generally it would be for 30-40 minutes. That gives you the required insights. After that, read the first chapter of the official book. The third step, after reading that, excellent audio lessons from Mike Chavell that clearly explains the exam essentials required for chapter 1. That is the suggested approach that you can follow. In this video, the given chapters starting from security fundamentals until the last section of the book, supply chain risk management, is briefly covered. Let us go to the next slide. It is good to know that you wanted to be certified CISSP, but before going into the details, before getting ready for your certification, let us understand the basic concepts. What is information security? What exactly is the information systems? Information systems is a combination of software plus hardware plus the communication, networking, and cables with which we communicate that deals with certain organizations' business. In nutshell, information systems is a combination of software, hardware, plus the communication networking that collect data, store data, process data, and then communicates data. This is what you need to clearly understand. Information systems deals with software, hardware, communication network, collecting the data, storing the data, processing the data, and then communicating the data for any organization that does business. What is data? Again, very simply, what do you mean by data? Data is anything that has certain value if it is really looked in next level from a context perspective. So in other words, data is a collection of facts. Information is the facts that are looked in a specific context. So data with a context is information. That's what you need to understand. Okay, so again, welcome again for your aspiring certification CISSP. Now with this introduction, you are clear what is information system. Within information system, what is information, how information is different from data, that is clearly articulated here. Now, the key terms, the entire CISSP or cybersecurity syllabus is prepared around these terms. If you really understand the required breadth and depth of these, you are done. What is security? Security is the state of being free from danger or threat. What can be the danger? Wherever there is a vulnerability that can be exploited by a rogue element, maybe a robber or trying to rob, or somebody exploiting some hacker trying to hack your system. So somebody who can exploit and can compromise on your security by really focusing on the weakness in your security system is what is clearly. Risk, the likelihood of a threat source exploiting a vulnerability. Some person has high risk category security government provides. Somebody may be a low risk. How do you differentiate that the degree of risk is the likelihood of a threat for an individual life or for an individual system? That is in nutshell. Okay. So that there are two other interesting terms now. Exposure. Exposure is an instant of being exposed to the losses. How many times certain security compromise happened? What is the exposure and what is the overall loss that is leading towards ALE and SLE that you will be covering or you will be learning in subsequent chapters. All these should be controlled by proper security controls. Security controls could be physical or technical or administrative. Please understand, security controls can be physical that you can see, or core technology driven, or maybe simply policies, rules, trainings requirements. All these actually fall under that criteria. So these are the essential terms required for CISSP. This slide looks that simple, but entire CISSP syllabus is only around these three terms. How do you protect confidentiality? How do you protect confidentiality? How do you protect integrity? How do you ensure the right availability at right time for the right person? Confidentiality in simple terms: prevent unauthorized access, ensure a specific data, set of files, set of resources are accessed only by authorized users or authorized systems, because those could be certain API interfaces. In other words, only by authorized subjects. Subjects are maybe a system that is trying to access, maybe an interface, or maybe an individual. What is integrity? Integrity, when I'm storing something in a database, that has to be intact, that cannot be modified by any unauthorized person. That's what the integrity. Availability, at any time the authorized person able to access. If I give one example, if I'm depositing $500 in my account, that is my confidential money that cannot be disclosed to unauthorized person, because it may be leading to security breach or certain vulnerability for me. When I am depositing $500, whenever I check that or whenever I want to withdraw, I am expecting that $500 always be $500. It is not less than that, plus any applicable interest that the bank is actually giving to me. Availability, at any time when I go to an ATM, I should be in a position to withdraw that money. Otherwise, the bank availability is not 24/7. If they charge certain fee without really disclosing to me, that is again a breach of integrity. My numbers actually came down. What I was expecting 500 came down to 450 or 400. Not acceptable. And if my amount is on public domain, public display, where anybody can steal, or I may be really compromised on my own private data, then this is how the CA triad actually works. Okay, if CAA is compromised, what happens? DAD threesome happens. This is a problem. This is not what we want to protect. This is what we want to avoid. What happens? Failure of confidentiality, unwanted disclosure. Unwanted disclosure. What happens if data integrity is compromised? It is altered. What was my original 500 or what I was expecting that to be 500 may be less. What was supposed to be a specific bank balance got changed. What was supposed to be a specific transaction got messed up. Destruction could be partial or full. Somebody is supposed to ensure the data availability for the intended purpose. However, it was destructed. However, it was really compromised so that whatever be the intent, it could be hackers, denial of services, or it could be intentional system shutdown. Whatever be the reason, it is not available. So if the triad CIA is compromised, the threesome DAD comes into picture. That you need to remember and should clearly understand the significance of CIA and the spirit of CIA, potential threat with DAD. Okay, what did we study so far? The basic security principles, the importance of CIA, and potential implications of if CIA is not compromised, not managed, then the DAD that actually takes over. How should confidentiality, integrity, and availability should be maintained? Here comes the AAA services. The first step for any user to access his or her privileges or any system to interface, first it has to identify. Providing username is one option. Swiping a card, second option. Maybe face detection softwares, what the latest mobile phones actually bring in could be the other option. Once identified, it needs to be authenticated. In face recognition, identification and authentication both happen in one go. But in other cases, first I enter my username, then I have to enter my password. I I put my ATM card in the ATM machine and then I need to enter the PIN. I am accessing my bank account through online and bank sends me OTP to my registered phone. So first step is I am identifying myself as a subject that is interested to do certain transaction. And second steps, further authentication to confirm that whatever I am claiming is genuinely, legitimately the same person I am or same subject I am. That is what the authentication. The next steps, okay, I am allowed to come in to the area, to the network, into the system. After that, what am I allowed to do, what am I not allowed to do is decided by my authorization, privileges, and rights. What can I read? On what databases I can write? What can be deleted? What can be only updated by me? CRUD operations, what the database programmers actually call, or read, write, delete, update access from the user perspective is done during the third step, authorization. So far good. But if something goes wrong, or from compliance perspective, maybe SOX compliance, maybe data security compliance, there should be certain audit trial in which I, as a subject who accessed into a system based on my identification, authentication, authorization, should be answerable for the efforts, for the deals, for the actions that I am performing after logging into the system. That is called auditing. Track and record the actions in case if I need to be officially made accountable, ensure the audit trail is available. That is in nutshell what we are talking about AAA services. CAA is what we need to ensure. For that, every subject goes through AAA services to access certain objects. How should these objects be protected? Here comes defense in depth. It's a layered approach. First layer, second layer, the third layer. So how it goes is, typical older days, you have a fort. Fort comes with a layer of wall and again further water body protecting it, again a secured forest area or some other far away where it is defending. So what sort of zones, classification, lattice structures in series, one after another, you are putting is defense in depth. That's the first part. Let me clear this. The second is abstraction. Abstraction expose only what is required, hide everything else. This is a typical object-oriented programming concept. But in security, certain privileges, set of privileges are actually grouped under maybe system admin group. Some other few privileges can be grouped under front-end development group, and few others could be the privileges, escalated privileges, database administrator access. So this makes grouping makes the overall security management easy, either to give more privileges to set of people or set of roles. That's the right statement. No people. Generally, we give privileges to roles or to set of branches, locations. Then comes the abstraction, a vital role it plays. The third is data hiding. The name itself is clear. You are hiding the data from visibility. How do you do that? There are various techniques. Steganography is one of the techniques. In subsequent chapters, in subsequent video lessons, you will be understanding more on that. For now, understand for the objects that we are considering: defense in depth, abstraction, data hiding, encryption. This is extremely critical aspect. How do you do synchronous encryption, asynchronous encryption? The whole video or whole chapter or maybe close to 100 plus pages in CISSP exclusively deal with encryption. Let us park it that for now. For this first chapter, from the object's perspective, these four play into role. From subject perspective, as covered in previous slide, CIA protection sec, AAA services come into picture. This comes a very interesting segment. Boundary. Where do you draw the boundary? What is private network? What is public network? To what extent I have control on my physical premises, my digital premises? Where that ends? Where do I draw the boundary of security? Maybe VPN tunneling, maybe firewall, maybe access control mechanism, whatever we are talking. Simply, a security boundary is the line of intersection between any two areas, subnets, or environments that have different security requirements. How do I protect endpoint security on my employees' laptops by using Zscalers and others? How do I protect my network by using firewalls? How do I protect the data exchange from my server to the browser by using the HTTPS encryption calls? So these really say, when do I say this is the boundary I am drawing between that segment and this segment, whether it is physical way where a gate pass is required, in a logical way, or I'm actually imposing certain token. So this is brief about the security boundaries. So we want to control CIA. We have the subject-based controls with AAA, object-based mechanism for data protection. Okay. We talked about how all these are connected together. How do we really manage in data protection? The next comes, how do you actually govern? When you say govern, from top management to the middle management and at the operations level, users, support staff, customers, who are accessing your information system applications, they need to be governed properly so that your entire information system supporting your business operations really work the way you are expecting them to work without compromising on your security. Security governance is not a separate entity. What are your norms of corporate governance? How exactly you are planning for your IT governance? And the combination of these two should be complementing your overall IS governance. There are various security governance frameworks, principles, guidelines, COBIT, ISO 27001, NASD SP 853. This is cybersecurity framework of National Institute of Standards and Technology. This is the detailed handbook. It is worth downloading and going through. May not be directly required for CISSP, but it gives substantial insight on how exactly NASD really conceptualized the overall security governance for all federal government projects and federal government contractors. In this section, security function management. If security function, how do you manage? Very first, please understand security. I put in intentionally, I put in project in quotes as project because security should be clear on its scope, should be clear on the timelines in which we want to maintain and regularly upgrade, and how much it is costing. Cost is meaningful. If you are protecting certain IS, the cost of protection should be always less than the overall value of the IS system, information system protect systems that are being protected. So this is how the link of feeling security as a project comes into picture. Security is a journey. It is not finished line. Today, my ISO 27000 audit completed. I am ISO 27001 certified. Tomorrow onwards, I can lay back is not acceptable. It is forever. It is a continuous journey because the threats are inevitable. Vulnerabilities always lurking around. How meaningfully we safeguard each day is what it says. That's the reason it is a journey. Okay, I have more security, I have great security. Giving a non-quantitative is different. Can you quantify? Can you really measure your potential vulnerabilities? How you are minimizing potential attacks? How you are reducing the number of controls that you are actually putting across? And what is your cost of security that you can quantify, which you want to optimize? That is the second term that talks about measurable. The third aspect, security is a business decision. Top management should decide and own up. It should be top to bottom, not bottom up. An operator, a security guard, or a front desk person cannot observe and dictate the terms. It should be driven as at the top level as a strategic decision, at middle management level tactical. Strategy is generally planned for 5 years and above. You call it is strategic planning. Something that is planned for 1 year is called tactical. Something that is really applicable for day-to-day operations with very detailed approach, those are called operationals. So this is the security function area. Consider everything as project. Consider these 4 options and keep managing your security, keep enhancing your security based on the threat factors. Okay, if security is considered a big ecosystem spread across every information system segment that we are talking, starting from a simple cable to the massive cloud server or larger cloud servers, the security comes into picture. Senior manager, maybe a CEO or chief information security officer or a CTO or combination of all these three. These are responsible. When we say responsible, we are not saying they are the hands-on people. No, that's not the intent. They are the key decision maker. They are owning up any security lapse that happens in their managerial decision making or in their review capacity. Security professionals who are the hands-on people. It could be a team, sorry for the typo, or the professionals who deal with the design, implementation, and maintenance of the security. And next comes a very critical term as far as CISSP is concerned. What is the role of asset owner? Something similar to in that direction or little paraphrased way, the questions can be asked. If that's the case, simply remember asset owner is responsible for classifying the information, whether it is high risk or low risk or public or private. That is the classification asset owner does. Based on that classification, the custodian, designated custodian, should be safeguarding the protection based on the classification of the assets and take care of CIA. Users are simply for their assigned job responsibilities. They access the data based on their specific role. They update certain segments. They read certain segments. They write new records. But they are expected to understand, uphold security policy of the organization. Who is auditor? Auditor, according to the decided audit frequency, is responsible for reviewing and verifying the security policy and how it is implemented. Audit is a, please understand, audit is a fact finding. It is not a fault finding. Audit majorly is meant for finding the facts. Is everything is conforming or how many non-conformances that need to be fixed? That is the auditor responsibility. Audit could be scheduled, audit could be surprise based on the organization choice for that particular situation. Generally, most of the audits in cybersecurity happen as per ISO 27001 norms. Once it is certified, the quarterly internal audit, the surveillance audits actually come into picture. The better way to implement security, start with certain proven frameworks that you feel or your organization feels right. COBIT, Control objective for information and related technology by ISACA, very reputed security organization. That put across COBIT, the latest COBIT framework suggests 6 principles. Provide stakeholders value. Every stakeholder see value with your security. Stakeholders are the individuals who are directly or indirectly getting impacted by your IT systems. Don't look security in silos, look holistically. Complete integrated picture you need to get while deciding any of your policies or procedures. That's what the holistic says. Dynamic governance was originally proposed by one Dutch scientist, Dutch engineer, that says there is dependency. Y is dependent on X, X may be again dependent on something else. Please be aware and take all these dynamic equations while deciding your entire ecosystem, entire governance. That's what it means by dynamic governance. So you can't develop something without considering the impact on X. You can't really focus on X by ignoring Z. That's what it says by dynamic governance system. Governance is different, management is different. This is implied. Governance is a set of policies and implementing and executing as per the expected outcome and reviewing, constantly giving the feedback is managerial. So really differentiate these two while driving your security control framework. Each organization is different. There is no cookie cutter solution. Understand what is really applicable for you. Accordingly, you tailor it. End-to-end governance. The way we are talking about the holistic policies, but review end-to-end to ensure you actually meet what you are expecting to get through this control framework. Apart from COBIT, there are various other frameworks. NASD Risk Management Framework 837, Cybersecurity Framework 853, ISO 27000, Information Technology Infrastructure Library. These are various other options that also would help you based on your requirements to establish your own security control frameworks. It is not one or all. It can be a combination also. You can actually pick based on your comfort. To ensure that governance we were talking, the control framework at the leadership level, at the top, you should be clear on what should be your policies. Once you define the policy, ISMS policy, which is can be one document or set of documents clearly articulating your objectives, vision, goals, outlines of the security framework that you feel apt for your organization. For that policy, you can pick the standards that you feel these are compulsory. For example, ISO 27001 says 8 requirements, 114 controls, 16 minimum mandatory documents. That is ISO 27001 expectation. So if you are planning for your ISO 27001 certification as an organization, your policy should be leading towards that, and your standards should be meaningfully maintained for this. And your SOPs that you are developing for your team, your users, your technical staff should be again aligning with 8 requirements, minimum 114 controls. You can have maximum. But for every control that is registered as essential by ISO 27001, you should be clear on how are you implementing. If it is not applicable, substantial justification, well documented justification with right approval should be coming into the picture. Guidelines at high level, these are the recommendations worth following, the best practices, the industry experts, certain benchmarking segments already documented for your specific industry segment that you can baseline and you can really implement. Baseline is, when you say baseline in CISSP, please understand, Minimum requirements are called baseline. Compulsory requirements are called standards. Baseline, standard. These two words are very critical as far as CISSP is concerned. Be aware. Baseline, minimum. Standard, compulsory. Now we are going to the next section. How the threats actually, what are the different options? How do you model a threat? How do you control? Microsoft suggests, Microsoft has an excellent framework: secure design, secure by default, secure deployment, secure communication. Under that, how threat can be categorized? What is the potential of spoofing? Can somebody spoof or imitate as another identity subject and can steal the data potentially? Can somebody tamper? What is the probability of tampering? How do I safeguard? Repudiation: an individual or a subject changes the data but may claim that he or she did not change the data. What is the probability of that repudiation? The ability of a user or attacker to deny having performed an action comes here. I stands for information disclosure. Leak of private or confidential data. How do you safeguard? Denial of services. This is completely compromising on the availability. Information disclosure is dealing with confidentiality compromise. Repudiation is talking about the integrity compromise. If you see, this is also, the tampering is also the same way. It is compromising on the integrity. Spoofing is a compromise on the confidentiality. Elevation of the privileges can really lead to any compromise of CIA. So Microsoft Sprite, an acronym, says how you can categorize before you safeguard. What should be your control mechanisms? What should be your investment? What should be your team's training? All those are discussed once you baseline certain parameters based on the Sprite. PASTA, process of attack simulation and threat analysis. This is also another threat modeling technologies, methodology spread across these 7 areas. What is your objective? What should be the scope? How do you dissect into various segments that help you to analyze? How do you analyze the threat? After analyzing the threat, how do you see the potential threats, weaknesses, vulnerabilities that you want to fix? How do you simulate the potential hack, potential attack, maybe denial of services? So here comes what sort of preventive mechanisms I can put in place. Maybe the ethical hacking, maybe really safeguarding, so that overall risk, the probability of occurrence, as well as the impact in case if the occurrence happens, both should come down. This is the overall goal of any threat modeling, either PASTA or STRIDE. After threat modeling, how do you manage a threat? How do you minimize the impact in case something goes wrong? How do you safeguard if attack actually happens, or you eliminate the attack altogether? Is based on these 5 areas. Trust boundaries. Understand the boundaries where you have control, where you are safeguarding. Identify various data paths, various ways, maybe the ports or the TCP/IP sockets through which people can actually come, or some data flow may potentially happen. How do you actually safeguard? What sort of ports you are opening up? FTP port or the standard TCP/IP ports that are required? How many are really required for your legitimate purpose? How many unwanted you want to close? What sort of privileges you want to put? Ensure CISSP experts always provide minimum privileges that are required. No way you are providing even a 1% or even one privilege extra than what is really required. That is a fundamental rule. Irrespective of the VIP status of any individual, CISSP expects you are not obligated to provide extra privileges and compromise the security. Security governance, security policies, procedures, and assumptions, as we already stated in previous slides, those will be documented failures. This is how threat can be managed. How do you prioritize threat management in case real attack happens? What would be the severity of the threat if it happens? What is the probability of occurrence? How frequent it can happen? Do you have mechanism in place to detect either before the threat happens or as early as possible if the cyber attack actually happens? There is a different rating prioritization matrix. More popular is again an acronym DREAD. What is the damage potential? What is the reproducibility? What can be the possibility or probability of exploitability? How many affected users or systems can be impacted if this particular attack happens? Can you discover, detect? So how soon, how fast, how effectively? That's what summary of threat management, decomposition approach as well as the DREAD approach. DREAD. We are the last segment of that chapter, chapter 1. Apart from the standard cyber security language, this specifically talks about the impact of supply chain risk management. Post-pandemic, we all recognize the importance of the vulnerability with supply chain. Refrigerators were not available. Dishwashers were waitlisted. Cars, the waitlisted even for few months to few days to few months. So all this happened. Supply chain risk was not anticipated well because the pandemic itself was never anticipated. At least this generation never visualized the brutality of pandemic. Same is applicable for cyber attack also. If one vendor supplying a specific car somewhere in Detroit is not able to supply, entire supply chain spread across 50 states got impacted. Same logic is applicable. So in supply chain risk management, how do you really ensure each vendor's minimum security and how the connected security is taken care? So this is a critical expectation to ensure seamless delivery to end customer, whether it gets delivered through eBay or through Amazon or by some Walmart, that is different. Ultimately, this chain is involved. This can't be ignored. This is the recap. What we covered: organization. What is an organization? What is the business purpose? What is basic security overview? CADAD triads, security boundaries, the governance structure, frameworks, and various threat modelings in which we take care. That's what was covered in this chapter. So this all these slides will be uploaded on Unical Academy. You can download the forums and the question answer session either on Unical Academy or on this YouTube channel is available for you to communicate more effectively. Wish you all the best. Thank you.